So Donald Trump once again is attacking the idea of voting by mail as, it'll increase fraud, it'll be all sketchy, people are going to be cheating the system, and obviously it's a bunch of nonsense, it's a bunch of bullshit. Many states have been successfully voting by mail for decades. I live in Washington State. In 2005, they ruled that any county that wants to vote by mail is able to do that. I've been voting by mail, I believe, since 2012. I think I voted in person in 2008 for Barack Obama. I didn't vote for him after that, and I've been voting by mail ever since. And again, it's just ridiculous to think that voting in person, especially on one of these electronic voting machines, is actually more secure or more safe or more fraud proof than getting a ballot sent to your house, sent to your P.O. box, wherever you get your mail sent to or forwarded to. That would be less safe than going into one of these voting places during a pandemic, mind you, in one of these electronic voting machines that they've already been shown can be easily rigged. It's ridiculous. So this is Trump echoing this just completely BS notion. Quote, to really vote and without fraud, you have to go vote at the polling place. No, you don't. You can vote by mail. Washington State's been doing it for 15 years. Oregon's been doing it. A number of other states have already done it. California is implementing it for this election. I believe Michigan is trying to do the same, and then Nevada, looks like Nebraska, West Virginia, and Georgia have made similar plans to offer applications for absentee ballots, but have not drawn sharp rebukes from the Oval Office because it's GOP led, obviously, those states. And this is from The Hill. Experts note there's minimal evidence of meaningful fraud in mail-in voting, and some see Trump's latest round of attacks as an effort to restrict ballot access and preemptively cast suspicion on the 2020 election results, should he lose. Obviously, and it's always been the goal of the Republican Party, the conservatives in government and power, whether that's on the local, state, or national level, to try to restrict voting, to try to engage in voter suppression as much as possible, because when they are able to lower voter turnout, even if it's by these really sketchy illegal means or just unethical means, like forcing people to go vote in person during a pandemic when they could potentially contract a life threatening medical condition and spread that in the community, when there is a safe, easy, available option to just voting by mail. It's obviously a form of voter suppression. They don't want people going out to the polls, and they think that will benefit the Republican candidates, in this case Donald Trump. Trump initially, and then Trump was threatening to withhold funding from Michigan and Nevada if they didn't, backtrack. Jesus Christ. But it's pretty ridiculous. But there's people online, even a person I follow on Facebook or Instagram, like a former high school friend type of person, who is trying to defend having to vote by mail, or vote in person. You obviously should be defending voting by mail at this point. I don't know what kind of drugs or substances or what you have to have going on in your head at this point to think forcing people to go in and vote in person during a pandemic is the right choice from an ethical or moral perspective, as well as people aren't going to be committing more voter fraud. If you're voting by mail, voter fraud already happens in an infinitesimal small amount of cases, and switching it to voting by mail isn't going to increase that one bit. Jesus Christ. So this is Trump again. Quote, now if you're president of the U.S. and if you vote in Florida and you can't be there, you should be able to send in a ballot, he said Thursday. If you're not well, you're feeling terrible, you're sick, you have a reasonable excuse, just a reasonable excuse, you should be able to vote in by mail. I think a reasonable excuse, Donald Trump, obviously, and if he put on his thinking cap, if he's, capable of doing that, he would see that a reasonable excuse for voting by mail nationwide would be during a pandemic. It's unclear if Trump views pandemic as a reasonable excuse. Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, this is the type of dystopian world that the United States is, the type of dystopian society, country that we live in, where the president is arguing against voting by mail during a fucking pandemic when he does that himself, and said for reasonable excuses people should be able to do that. We're in the middle of a pandemic, a public health crisis. Seems like a pretty reasonable excuse to me. But then again, he's a reality star, or he's a reality TV show host. He's a buffoon. He's willing to say or do anything to get reelected and protect his power. And him just trying to, just lying. Again, just lying. Basically, I mean, you're hard-pressed to find a press conference or a tweet or an interview where he doesn't completely lie or fabricate about whatever the topic or topics are that are being discussed. And this is another example of that. Again, there's no evidence whatsoever that voting by mail increases voter fraud, and actually it would allow higher rates of voter turnout because people would be able to, get their ballots ahead of time, send those in. They wouldn't have to take off work because it's not obviously election day, voting day. If we did have to go in person, which obviously we shouldn't, it should be all voting by mail. It should be a national holiday to begin with. It would increase voter turnout, voter participation by having it be voting by mail. And again, that's the ultimate reason that Donald Trump is against it, because he wants to suppress the vote. The Republicans, the conservatives in power, want to suppress the vote. That's the strategy that they see their party, their candidates, in this case specifically Donald Trump, having the biggest advantage is to limit the number of people who will go out to vote. And if you make people go vote in person during a pandemic, they're making the conclusion that if that's what happens, and their people will turn out more, or more of their people will turn out, as opposed to the Democratic candidates, and they could very well be right about that. And that's the calculation that they're making. If you like the video, like the damn video. If not, hit that dislike button. That's cool too. Subscribe for more content. Peace. Much love.